Welcome to Between the Reads, where we shine a spotlight on some of the most talented Black authors in the industry to discuss their works of fiction and the inspirations behind them. Each episode, we'll dive into the rich and diverse world of literature, exploring everything from historical fiction to romance and speculative fiction to YA and beyond. Tune in as we celebrate the voices of Black authors and the power of storytelling. Are you ready, Boos and Bros? Then sit back, relax, and let's get to it. Christal Holliday-Firmin is a mom, wife, and an award-winning author that blends her playful sense of humor and whimsical vision of the world into her work. She is a DMV-born poet who is passionate about improving literacy while increasing diversity and positive family representation in children's literature. Christal started writing poetry as soon as she could hold a pencil, submitting various pieces to church, school, and national poetry contests along the way. After taking a hiatus, this poet decided to step out of the box to share delightful stories after becoming a new parent. Christal's son and husband continue to be her support system and the sparks to her creativity throughout her author journey. Her first book, Mommy and Daddy's Christmas Treat, is a heartwarming story that uncovers what the magic of Christmas truly is, the pure essence of family love, togetherness, and new beginnings. Born on Christmas Day, it was no surprise her first book was Christmas-related. C.L. Holliday-Firmin's second book, You Can Have Your Cake and Grandparents Too, is a delightful story about a grandson and the love he has for all 6 of his grandparents. This tale features colorful illustrations that aid in describing what makes each grandparent special and the exciting experiences he has with them. It takes a village to raise a child, and where better to start than caring grandparents. Christal, welcome to Between the Reads.
Yay!
Yay! I love it when my guests are so excited to be on the show, y'all. That just warms my heart. Welcome.
See, I've been watching all your other podcasts and I was like, okay, I just love her energy. And so I'm here for it.
Oh, well, good. Well, good. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you made it. Y'all, she's on vacation, so she was running and scrambling to get here. I appreciate the effort to stay committed to your appointment. You know, I've had instances where people just didn't show and didn't call and did nothing. So I appreciate the commitment.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So why don't you tell us what You Can Have Your Cake and Grandparents Too is all about?
Okay. So I have my hardback here and I also have my paperback. And so this book is all about grandparents and all the fun you can have with grandparents. Mm-hmm. And the inspiration behind this book is my little one. And no, this is not my little one. He's actually he's younger than this.
Okay.
But he does have 6 grandparents. And so that's what made me want to write the book. Just watching them fawn over this baby because my mother, my hubby's mother, dads and everything, they have been waiting on grandchildren for a very long time. And when he came, boxes at the house, people showing up unannounced. Let me hold the baby. Let me keep the baby. Oh my goodness. I am excited for it because when I was growing up, I had 3 grandparents living and a great grandparent that was living. And so 2 of them were in the island, so I didn't get to see them. And my dad's mom I saw all the time, and she was the grandma that baked cookies and things like that. But I grew up with my mom and her mother. And because you grow up with a grandparent, they aren't necessarily the baked cookies grandparent. She was more of a parent.
Right.
So,
like a second mom.
Yes. Oh my goodness. And I want the grandparents my son has right now. Okay. Because they take him everywhere. They spoil him no matter what he wants, he gets. And so I wanted to capture that. So quickly, I know I got off topic, but the book is about a little boy having a birthday, right? And he's talking to his mom about, hey, I want candy, I want cookies, I want cake. And she's like, you can't have those sweets because it's just too sweet, right? But then he also hears his mom telling his dad that his grandparents are sweet, for doing things for him. So now he thinks he only can have one.
That
So
was the
he
cutest thing to me when I read the book.
I
That was so
know.
sweet.
So he goes through the whole book saying all the fun things they were doing, from dancing and singing and baking and
Mhm,
kicking
mhm,
soccer balls and
mhm,
flying a plane to see his grandparents. And so he's going through all this, trying to figure out which one he wants, only to
mhm.
realize that he doesn't have to pick one. And
Right.
it's it to me, it was this is my favorite, one of my favorite books. I only have two, but
Uh-huh.
I I like the when kids read it, or when I read it
Mhm,
to them, the excitement they
mhm.
get around. Oh, I've done this with my grandparent. I want to do
Aw.
this with my grandparent. And
Mhm,
also recognizing that there are different grandparent names in this book. So
mhm,
we hit
mhm.
a lot of people that
Yeah, you
not
hit
everybody.
Nana and
Mimi,
Mimi, which
Gigi,
is my
Granny.
nickname.
See? See? And how many children's books have you seen all of these grandparent names in? You typically only see
Right.
one,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly,
So
exactly.
it's been a ball just reading it with people and seeing
Mhm.
reactions and things of that nature. So I'm super
Right.
excited.
It's a sweet story. I mean, and the illustrations are beautiful,
Thank you.
and it's got a flow. It's poetic and it rhymes. So, it's just a sweet story. And I just love that he was just like he's sitting here like you could really tell that he's like weighing it out. He was like, well, he's going through all these choices and he's like, how am I supposed to pick one? Like, I can't do this. And then
Right,
his parents are like, oh, baby, no.
right, right.
Have all your grandparents here, honey. We were talking about the actual sweets.
Right, right, right.
It's so sweet. It's such a wonderful story. It's a wonderful story. So I want to go back to this family dynamic.
Yes.
So family dynamics can be very complex, especially in a blended family where you have multiple grandparents.
Hmm.
So how did you navigate portraying these dynamics in a way that's relatable and understandable for young readers?
So so honestly, this is about my son right now. So,
Mhm.
my
Mhm.
mom and dad split, hubby's mom and dad split, and
Mhm.
dads got remarried. And so that's going on now in the world.
Mhm.
Like, I mean,
Mhm.
it just happens that way. And
Right.
so a lot of kids that recognize that, I do have some people that are like, how does he get six grandparents? And then other
Right.
kids are like, yeah, my papa married Miss Annie, and it just kind
Mhm.
of sits with them.
Mhm.
So it's relatable in that, one, the illustrations beautifully show it, and two,
Mhm.
it's relatable that people are living this today, and that
Yeah.
there are so many diverse families out there, and it's okay not to for the grandparents not being married. It's
Mhm.
okay. There's books out here where parents, they don't stay together, and
Right.
I feel like there's a lot of people, or I'm just gonna say people, that are trying to keep these kind of issues away from our kids. And
Mhm.
the problem is that when they're living it, why not see it in a book? Because now
Right.
they don't feel by themselves. They feel
Mhm.
like it's
Exactly.
happening, it's normal, things of that nature. And
And they seen, and when you feel seen, that can be a huge boost to your self-esteem.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely.
When
And
you
you could
know that you're not the only one going through this thing.
absolutely, absolutely. And
Mhm.
to have fun doing it. I mean,
Mhm. Mhm.
it's not always doom and gloom and people were sad about it. And
Mhm.
to be honest, we had a 10-year anniversary last year.
Mhm.
And we rented a house and had all the grandparents. Like I said, we're living this now, right?
Wow.
And we had
Wow.
everybody under one roof, and not
Mhm.
an issue. We ate together,
And that
we
is
had fun together,
wonderful.
and realizing that doesn't happen with everybody, but also
Yeah.
wanting to showcase that it can happen, right?
It can happen, yes,
Absolutely.
absolutely, 'cause it definitely would not happen here because my husband's ex is and ain't no way I will ever be in the same room with her unless I absolutely have
Have
to
to.
be. Because if we were on vacation and I stayed in the house with her, somebody's gonna end up dead and it ain't gonna be me.
Oh no!
I'm just saying.
Oh
I'm just saying. So it's wonderful to see this dynamic and to show people what's possible, and because you might even have a case where, kids might feel guilty, like, I like all my grandparents. Is it okay to love them all? And your book is saying, yeah, you can love all your grandparents. It's absolutely fine.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and maybe even it'll start to help adults understand that, listen, we may be separated, but we're gonna do this thing together so that our child feels safe showing his or her love for all of us.
Absolutely. And that's the other thing, right? So adults reading this are like, oh, maybe they haven't had the best relationship with their own parents, so their children
Mhm.
doesn't have that relationship. And some of
Mhm.
my parents are saying, you know what, maybe it's time, right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
it's kids learn from books and adults learn from books.
Yes.
And I just I wanted to also shed a light on how grandparents can help us, right?
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
it's not just about dropping your kid off, but the wisdom that they share with them, the love that they share with them.
Mhm.
There's things that they can teach them that we as parents, although we might want to teach them,
Mhm.
maybe the child is more receptive from a grandparent, right? Because the
Right.
grandparent is the fun, right?
Mhm.
And the parents
Exactly.
are giving all of the rules. So we're doing our children a disservice if they actually have grandparents, right? And they don't. We're not helping or encouraging that relationship because
Mhm.
there's things that we're missing out on. So,
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and that kind of goes into my next point. You can elaborate on this,
mhm,
but there you show through the book the importance of showing different generations and backgrounds.
mhm.
How do you feel that that will foster an understanding among children that all generations are important?
I mean, one, respect, right?
Mhm.
So if you have a respect for your parents, your grandparents, hopefully you're going out into the world and showing that same respect, right?
Mhm.
You're showing
Mhm.
it with the teachers and people that you meet along the way. Um, I just I feel like sometimes you can tell at home when you see children
Mhm.
what they're doing at home or what they
Mhm.
see at home, and
Mhm.
they mirror us, right?
Right.
And that was another reason why I wanted to write books showing positive family representation, because
Mhm.
that doesn't happen for everybody, right? And
Mhm.
sometimes the only way a child may learn something might be through a book.
Right.
And that, I mean, I applaud all of the indie authors out there that are doing this, because there are so many books on my bookshelf right now just from authors that I follow, and the creativity, the depth of
Yes.
just, I mean, it's amazing.
Mhm.
I'm just glad
It
that we
is.
have platforms that we can put out ourselves, as opposed to trying to get an agent and trying to go in a long process. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Mhm.
However, if I send my book to 1,000 places and they say no, I still have an
Mhm.
option, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's what I'm here for, because and who has a year, 2 years, 3 years to wait for a book to come out? I mean, tomorrow's not promised. You could die before your book comes out. I
Right.
mean, we're still dealing with the pandemic here, and
Right.
new strains of COVID. Anything could happen. You talking about, okay, it's coming out in 2026. What?
Mm-hmm.
And what am I supposed to do in the meantime? There's only so much promotion you could do before people are just like, I need the book. I don't want to hear it's coming out. Don't tell me it's coming out in 2026. Start talking in 2026, like a few months before it's coming out. Don't keep talking to me about all this nonsense. It's too long.
2 years ago, or maybe it was a year and a half ago, and I'm not going to say the name of the book, but I follow somebody that was lucky enough to get, somebody saw her on her
Uh huh.
platform, and they picked up her book, and she started
Hmm.
promoting it a year and a half ago. I forgot all about it until 2 weeks ago when she's like, "Oh, it's about to come."
Like, oh wait, what? What? Oh wait, let
I
me
was
go
like,
back.
"Oh yeah, I was going to get that book."
But see, and then like you might lose interest. You're like, I don't really,
Yeah.
It's like the longer you let something sit in your shopping cart, you're just like,
Let's not
you
talk
know.
about shopping carts, because my
Uh,
Amazon shopping cart right now.
Listen, my Amazon saved list is so ridiculous. I have so much stuff in my list, and I'm just like, whew. And Amazon be playing with me too. Like, you have this stuff in your list, right?
Oh,
This went on sale today. Like, stop playing with me.
they remind you. See, we're sisters. I know it. I knew it. I knew it.
Listen, Amazon be playing them games. They don't wanna let your bank account be great. They're like, you can get free shipping today." Like,
Oh, there's a
"Okay."
discount. It's 10% off. Yeah. Yeah.
Like, "Oh, man." So, your book, how
Hmm.
do you believe that diverse representation in children's literature can positively impact a child's sense of identity and belonging?
Oh man, that's such a deep question. See, I thought I was going to come on and just laugh my way through this. Okay,
You
so
laugh, but you know we gotta get deep too,
yeah.
especially with children's books because there's still not enough children's books that have us on them. There's
No,
more. There's definitely when I was a kid there weren't any,
no.
so we're definitely doing better now, but there's still a way to go. So let's talk about that.
So that was another reason why I started writing. Children's books, at least.
Mhm.
My little one, looking for books in general, not just grandparents' books, but just books with brown on it, was
Mhm.
hard. And it
Mhm.
wasn't until I was starting to follow a lot of the other indie authors that I was like, oh, let me get this one. Let me get this one. Because I started
Mhm.
finding a lot of those.
Mhm.
And I can see the difference from the books that my coworkers, bless them, sent me books.
Mhm. Mhm.
Not one with a brown person in it. Not one.
Mhm.
Now, mind you, I'm in a corporate world where there's not many brown
Uh-huh.
people. And so I
Uh-huh.
didn't expect, but I got a lot of animals. I got a lot of non brown. Um, and reading those books, they while funny, now he looks at the new books that I have and says,
Mhm.
"Oh, he looks like me. Oh, she looks
Mhm.
like my cousin. Oh, she looks like mommy. Curly hair,
Mhm.
straight hair, big hair."
Mhm. Right.
And when I was little, I had a lot of non mixed books, non brown books.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so I'm a little more tan than I used to be. So I was very, very fair
Mhm. Mhm.
and with long hair. And I told my mother one day, I was looking in the mirror and I was like, I'm washing my pretty white face. And
Oh,
it took her
wow.
away. And my mother's from the islands and she's fair
Mhm.
skinned and she has
Mhm.
greenish gray eyes. And,
Mhm.
I went to a private school that had mostly non brown people. And so
Mhm.
I had no idea. And after that, she
Mhm.
started clearing out things. Then I got a Kenya doll. And so whatever
She was
brown.
like, "Listen, baby, no, 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 no." She was like, "Black comes in all shades. I need you to understand you are black."
Absolutely, absolutely. And I want that for him. And we don't
Mhm.
only have just black people books. We
Mhm.
have Indian, we have
Mhm.
Spanish, and the
Mhm.
reality is that we're mixed with a lot of things. And
Mhm.
so I want him to be able to look at another child and say, we can be friends no matter what
Right.
they look like. We have books
Right.
with disabilities. And that's another thing that I started following more authors that are doing those as well. If we
Mhm.
don't tell them at home, it's okay.
Mhm.
These people
Yeah.
are okay, no matter what they
Mhm.
look like, what their circumstances, how they talk, if they speak another language. If we don't introduce that at home, then they don't know
Mhm.
how to be prepared for that in the future, right? And to
Yeah.
be honest, I don't want some other child looking at my kid like, oh, we can't be friends because of your skin color, your hair's too curly, or whatever have you.
Mhm.
And so I want to push as many books out in the world and support as many indie authors in the world that's out there pushing diversity, because diversity is
Mhm.
not just for the diverse. Diversity
Right.
is for everybody. And
Everybody.
although we're not marketing our book to everybody, I don't
Mhm.
want a person from a different background to look at my book and say, "Oh, I can't get it because there's a brown boy on it." The reality
Right.
is that I had nothing but white books when I
Mhm.
was younger, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And I read them just like any other book. And
Mhm.
anybody else should be able to read these books just like any
Right.
other book.
Absolutely.
And the amount of things
Absolutely.
that you learn. I joined, and I don't know if you're familiar with this, but Dolly Parton has this thing where she gives away free books. All you do is
Oh, no, I
sign up.
didn't know that.
Yes.
Huh.
So depending on where you live, you
Uh-huh.
go through your library. It's called Imagination Library. Okay.
Uh-huh.
I didn't know what to expect, but I signed up. And every year, I mean, every month we get books based on your age until they get
Uh-huh.
about 5 or 6, I think. That's when it
Uh-huh.
stops. They send you free books every
Okay.
month. And when I tell you, I didn't know what to expect, but every month, if it's an Indian History Month, or if it's a Spanish History Month, it's a Black History Month, anything that's going on that month, we're likely to have a book that mirrors that.
Wow.
And
Okay, Doll.
that's what I'm saying. I was like,
Dolly
okay,
out here
Dolly.
promoting diversity, girl. Go ahead.
And I mean, the books that we have, I mean, we have one specifically, and I'm not home. I wish I was so I could show it to you, but it has celebrations around the world,
Hmm.
Brazil, India, Asian countries,
Wow.
and his face lights up like, ooh, can we do that? Can we go here? And
Right, right.
you spark imagination. You make your kids a better, well-rounded person. They go out into the world knowing more, being able to adjust to different things. And we do our kids a disservice
Hmm.
just by keeping them in a box. We need to let them
Hmm.
experience it all. So,
Because that makes them more empathetic. And if they're
absolutely.
more empathetic, they are less likely to grow up being racist
Yes.
and having implicit biases. And if they do have biases, they are more likely to say, "Oh, I have these biases. I need to check this," you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So, your book combines themes of love,
Mhm.
family, and even decision making.
Yes.
So, what do you hope your young readers are going to take away from this story? In addition to, it's okay to have multiple grandparents and
Right.
blended families. What else are you hoping they'll take away from this?
So that is one of the pieces that I'm hoping people highlight. I started to send my books to teachers also to talk about the emotion side of it because there's various
Mhm.
emotions that he goes through, and
Mhm.
that is something that a lot of our schools now are putting more highlights on the social emotional
Mhm.
awareness. So that's one
Mhm.
thing I want them to take away from it because it's a situation. It's not a book that says, "Oh, this is sad. This is."
Mhm.
So I think, at least for my child, his learning
Mhm.
style, this was helpful for him because now
Mhm.
he goes through and goes, oh, he's excited. Oh, he's not happy. Why is he not happy?
Mhm.
And that opens a
Mhm.
conversation for that. So that's one, the social emotional awareness around it.
Mhm.
Two, most people don't hone in on, oh, one, he heard something his mom said and didn't understand. And he never
Mhm.
really asked her to clarify, right?
Right.
So I think sometimes us as parents, we say things and the child, they just nod their head because, oh, mommy said, daddy said, right? And
Mhm.
they may not
Mhm.
understand. Sometimes we need to take a step back and let them know what certain things mean. That way
Right.
there aren't misunderstandings. He goes through a
Mhm.
range of emotions. I mean,
Yeah.
excited, happy, sad,
Mhm.
confused,
Mhm.
and all of that could have been stopped in the beginning. Now we wouldn't have had a story, but
Right.
it could have been
So it's
stopped.
a good thing.
It could have been stopped in the beginning. You know, our
Mhm.
children have there's an increase of anxiety going on amongst our children,
Yeah.
and a lot of
Yeah.
that comes from they don't understand. They don't
Mhm.
know. They don't know
Mhm.
how to one. They don't think emotions are okay to have. Our black boys
Yeah.
don't think emotions are okay to have.
That's
Girls,
a whole show all by itself. Okay.
don't tell my son he can't cry. Okay? Don't,
Right.
because then you got these older men that don't know how to handle their emotions. And
Mhm.
I mean women the same. We're not perfect.
Mhm. Mhm.
We need help. They need help. We all need
Mhm.
to help each other. And I just
Mhm.
feel like this book, multi-generational, helps with family love, um,
Mhm.
emotional awareness, right?
Mhm.
And taking the time to talk to our kids, right? We just need
Mhm.
to know that they're younger than us. We have the wisdom. We
Right.
have to slow down a little bit and say, okay, I know
Mhm.
we got to work. I know we got to get to school. I know we're ripping and running. We got all these lists, but sometimes it just take a breath and
Mhm.
make sure to take in your child, right? And
Right.
make sure that they have everything that they need to be successful.
Absolutely. I think we sometimes we forget as parents that these are little people,
Hmm.
and what comes so naturally to us, they're still learning how to
Right.
do.
Right.
So yeah, it's important because he's like, "Oh, okay, she said you can't have a lot of sweets, so I can't have all my grandparents
Right.
here."
Right.
And it's just like, "Oh, I felt for him so much." But like you said, sometimes we need to stop and just say, do you understand what I'm saying to you? Or, because I grew up where my parents, if I ask why, they say, you don't ask why, you do it because I said so. And I love
Yes.
my parents, but I hate that because kids aren't trying to be malicious or snarky. They just truly want to understand why,
Hmm.
because there's something in their little brain that is not connecting. And sometimes, if you're in a life or death situation, yeah, you just like do this and don't ask me no questions, I'll explain it later.
Right.
But in other times, yeah, if they ask why, well, just sit down and take a few minutes and explain. And
Yeah.
then, that would probably open up the lines of communication and, reduce, if not altogether alleviate, anxiety, temper tantrums, all that,
All of
you
that.
know?
All of that.
Mhm.
And I had my little one just turned 3. And boy, when I tell you,
Aw.
I have to have the patience of the world.
Yes,
It
you
is,
do.
and
I
funny.
remember that age. I'm glad my children are young adults because you are in the throes of
I
toddlerdom
know.
and all that that entails. Girl, take my hat off.
Absolutely, absolutely. He is typically a very happy child. He is one of
Mhm.
those ones that like to try everything at least once.
Mhm.
So I'm
Okay.
excited for that.
Uh-huh.
But we got to a point, and this is about social awareness. We got to a point
Uh-huh.
where all he was doing when we read books was pointing out the characters that were sad, and we had to address that
Oh,
because
yeah.
he wasn't coming home sad. He comes home all smiles, and
Uh-huh.
then oh, he said, she said, the donkey said, the rabbit said. I'm like, okay,
Uh-huh.
why are we only focusing on the sad? Tell mommy. Is there
Uh-huh.
something wrong? Right? So
Uh-huh.
noticing these things, being aware of these
And what
things.
did he say? What was his thing with
He
that?
he was learning how to draw. So he was 2 at the time. He was learning how to
Okay.
draw circles, right? And the
Uh-huh.
only thing he knew how to draw was a sad face. And so he
Ah.
was recognizing. He's like, "Ooh, sad face, all happy," and I'm like, "What?"
Like, baby, you okay? Because you talking about sad in a very happy way here. What's
Right,
going on?
right, right. But all it took a few it took a few conversations. It wasn't
Mhm.
just that one conversation, but
Mhm. Mhm.
all I'm saying is we gotta sometimes just take a deep breath, take the time
Right.
that we need, and talk to our
Mhm.
baby's. Make sure they
Mhm.
okay.
And so for him, it was an accomplishment because he's like, I can draw that. I
Yes.
can draw sad. So it's not that everything was wrong in this case, thank goodness. It was just that he's like, I can draw that. I know how
Mm-hmm.
to draw that.
Absolutely. So.
Yeah. So conversations around representation
Hmm.
have evolved a
Yes.
lot. So what advice do you have for aspiring authors who want to authentically represent diversity in their own children's literature works?
Okay, so I want to start by saying just putting a black person or brown person on the front of your children's books doesn't necessarily make it diverse. I know there's a lot of conversations
Mm.
around that. There are
Yep.
non brown authors that put brown characters in their books all the
Mhm.
time. Um,
Mhm.
but let me get back to the question here. Inspiring authors, right? Okay, so one, I would honestly write from the heart, right?
Mhm.
Mine came from my little one.
Mhm.
That's where it came from. It came
Mhm.
from my family. It came from all of the children around us that I see,
Mhm.
and my hope in the future is to have more diverse diversity in my books.
Mhm.
It's not just going to be brown. We have Spanish in our family. It's
Mhm.
it's okay to have white, Caucasian, whatever the political
Mhm.
way to say,
Mhm.
in your
Mhm.
books,
Mhm.
we are all human, right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
what I employ to what I want to say to new authors is that it
Mhm.
is okay to branch out. Just
Mhm.
because you're brown doesn't mean you have to have only brown. Just
Mhm.
because um, you're not disabled doesn't mean you have to not include people in your book that have disabilities.
Mhm.
Um, I would start with you.
Mhm.
If this is your first book, start with what's around you, write what's in your
Mhm.
heart. And then as you get ready to branch out, make sure that you do the research on these
Yes.
other things that you want to include, because
Mhm.
if you're not the the person that knows about that subject, or that
Mhm.
those people, that culture, that kind of thing, make sure that you do your research and display correctly the
Yes.
diversity that you want to display in the book. So that is
Mhm.
my advice to you. My other advice is to make sure that you get an editor. Please use an editor.
Please use an
Please use
editor.
an editor. Um,
Please. Yes.
and don't be your own illustrator unless you're an actual illustrator.
All good points. All good points. Excellent points, actually, because whether it's a children's book or another book, if you're writing from another person's point of view and you don't live that experience, I highly recommend you talk to someone who does have
Yeah,
that experience.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about the writing. So what made you say, because you're a poet and the book is in verse, what made you say I want to write this in this way and I want to write children's books? I know your son was the inspiration, but you could have written like young adult and so what made you want to write in this way?
So it seems like with the children's books, at least that we were reading to him at the time, they were all in rhyme. And
Mhm.
so, and it's not easy. People think writing in rhyme is easy. It is not easy. And
Mm-mm.
I've seen books that have forced rhymes, and all it does is mess up the cadence when the parents are reading to the kids.
Right,
So,
right.
um, but I wanted to take I've written in rhyme before. So I
Mhm.
wanted to take my hand in that. And what I found in the rewrite process, hear that, authors, you
Mhm.
may have to rewrite.
Oh, you're gonna
Um,
have to rewrite.
is that I am wordy. I am
Mhm.
so wordy,
Mhm.
and children, they don't they don't
They
need
don't want
wordy.
that. Mhm.
They typically, especially in the age range that I'm in, so also know your age range,
Mhm.
2 to 7, 3 to 8. Those children are learning the books through pictures. So you want to make
Mhm.
sure that your pictures are on point, and you don't want the words to be entirely too long, because
Mhm.
then they stop paying attention. So you just have to
Mhm.
know your audience. And
Mhm.
because my child was younger, I wanted a book that I could read to him. And
Mhm.
and plus we started getting a lot of books. That's another thing that I would tell other authors to do, is to read books in the genre that you want to write in, because that will help you.
Mhm.
So
Absolutely.
the Llama Llama series, it's very rhymy. All of the books.
Uh-huh.
And my son absolutely loves these Llama Llama books. And I like, I've only read a few of them, but I do like the cadence and the
Mhm.
pictures, and it keeps
Mhm.
that age range, glued until it's
Mhm.
ready, right? Until it's
Right.
finished. And
Mhm.
so that's why I wanted to be. Yes, my child was only one, I think, when my
Okay.
first book came out. And so I didn't
Mhm.
want a book that was too far away from him. And I do think what's going to happen as he gets older, I'm
Mhm.
probably going to shift. My
And
age
go
range is going to get
okay.
high. Yeah. So there
Mhm.
will
Mhm.
most likely be books that come out that are probably younger, tweens, once he gets
Mhm.
older. And I'll start to
Okay.
write, books that are around what he's reading at the time. So we'll
But
see.
that's a great gift because if you do that, then you not only are creating books for readers out here, but you are giving him a gift
Hmm.
that long, long, long in the future, after you've lived a lifelong full life
Right.
and you have passed on from this earth,
Yeah.
he's going to have all these books that his mommy wrote for him.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
that's a treasure. That's a treasure.
And I hope he thinks that way too. And I mean, on the other side, it's kind of like, okay, my books are making money. He'll continue to
Mhm.
make money when mommy's no longer
Exactly.
here.
So now
So,
you're also passing on a financial legacy to him as well.
absolutely. That's a
There
whole
you
nother
go.
podcast.
Yeah, right? That's a whole we can make that a whole podcast in itself, not just
Right.
an episode, but a whole
A whole
podcast.
series.
Yep. Absolutely. So I want to talk about the illustrating.
Yes.
Talk to me about that process, how you went about picking the illustrator, how you went about figuring out what pictures were going to go with what words. I'd like for you to share that with our readers and aspiring writers out there who might be listening.
Absolutely. So the initial book that I wrote, the first book I wrote that story in like 5 minutes. And quite
Okay.
honestly, I didn't know what I was doing. It was one of those things where you just jump in and do it, right? And I
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
happened to go to Fiverr based on a lot of the I watched a lot of videos on YouTube, and
Mhm.
a lot of the advice of other authors were to use like Upwork or Fiverr to find your illustrator. And so I
Mhm.
started there. And the first illustrator that I started working with was not it.
Okay.
And so what you do is you go and you find an illustrator based
Mhm.
on, what their portfolio looks like, right? And if that matches what your dream is, then you
Mhm.
go ahead and go with that. So
Mhm.
the first illustrator, I gave her a scene that I wanted her to draw, and it didn't work out. And I so happened to
Mhm.
find another illustrator.
Mhm.
And I used that same illustrator from the first book to the second book. She was absolutely amazing. You have to
Mhm.
find an illustrator that meshes with you,
Mhm.
draws the type of drawings that you like and the style that you
Mhm.
like, and
Mhm.
you also want to make sure it meets your price, right?
Mhm. Right.
So those are various things you have to consider when you're
Mhm.
looking for a an
Mhm.
illustrator. My illustrator was absolutely new, or a little newer to being an illustrator, and so she worked
Mhm.
with me a lot more than probably a more seasoned illustrator would. So she would make a
Mhm.
lot of the changes that I needed,
Mhm.
no matter how many changes that I wanted to make.
Mhm.
So it
Mhm.
worked out. And the greatest thing about having an illustrator that is actually an illustrator is that they give
Mhm.
you their point of view. She gave
Right.
me what I wanted and said
Mhm.
it would look better if this, right?
Right.
And that's what makes
Mhm.
the book better, right?
Mhm. Yep.
My second book, I feel like I gave her a lot more guidance, right? Because the
Mhm.
characters I wanted to look a certain way. And there are
Mhm.
various shades of brown
Mhm.
in my
Mhm.
book. My mother, as I said, is fair skinned, where my stepmother is darker, right?
Mhm.
And so I
Mhm.
didn't want a book that only had the same monotone, the same brown, because, she couldn't get it a certain way. We worked
Mhm.
on skin colors to
Mhm.
make sure
Mhm.
that it was right. And I wanted, people to feel represented in it, and that
Mhm.
we all are beautiful no matter what color you are. Um,
Mhm.
and so the process took some months. Sometimes
Mhm.
it takes a little longer to get what you need. But
Mhm.
as long as you find someone that's going to work with you in your budget, in the style that you want, in the time
Mhm.
frame that you want, I think that you
Mhm.
would be great. Now, like I said, there are illustrators on Fiverr is what I use, but there's also
Mhm.
Upwork. You
Mhm.
can also find illustrators on Instagram. And
Mhm.
I know there are a few other sites, but if you find an illustrator on Instagram, make sure that you look at their references. There are people
Yeah.
out here that are
Are scamming y'all. Be careful, please. Please be
absolutely.
careful. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
at least with
But I there's
Fiverr.
something else. Listen,
Hmm.
the grandmas in this book are fly, okay?
Yeah.
They are not little old ladies with the cane. I was like, okay, grandma, okay, Nana,
Because
okay, Mimi.
that's not our story. That's not what we
Right.
have. So,
Mm-mm.
I mean, there are grandparents out there. My dad's grandmother was a little older, right? And she
Mhm.
she
Mhm.
moved a little slower and things like that. But that's just not
Mhm.
our story right now. And there's a
Mhm.
lot of young fly grandparents out there, so we got to show those too.
Yes. That grannies was flying here. I was like, okay. I hope that when I am a, because my husband calls me Mimi because my oldest son is my stepson, and
Okay.
when he was little, he just looked at me one day and said Mimi, and that's what
Oh.
has stuck. So I'm like, when I am a grandmother, I want to be the fly Mimi. I want to look like the Mimi in your book.
Yes.
They were fly, y'all. If you get
They-
this for your kids, the grannies up in here ain't your typical grannies,
no.
okay? Mm-mm, mm-mm, mm-mm. So you talked about this a little bit back in the beginning of the podcast, but I want to go back over it. What kind of feedback have you received from this book?
So the feedback that I've received from the book, from the parents, was,
Mhm.
it made them realize sometimes they have not done their part in making sure that their
Mm.
kids have the amount of time that they need to have with their grandparents. The other
Mhm.
feedback I've gotten is it made them think back to their grandparents.
Oh,
And so it's
yeah.
a little bit of a nostalgia, a little bit of a sad moment if their grandparents are no longer around. But I
Mhm.
want to build that, get the emotion
Mhm.
around that, especially if you had such great memories around them. But I'm
Mhm.
glad that this book has pushed parents to want to have their kids have more of a relationship with their grandkids. My
Mhm.
grandparents, they're excited because as you said, they're not the typical grandparents in this book, and they're
Right.
like,
Right. Right.
"Oh, I could see me in this book."
Like, hey, all right.
So I think those three things. The other feedback was around the teachers that have used
Mhm.
it for the social emotional piece around that. So
Mhm.
I had created some activities and things around my book. So
Mhm.
they were able to use that quickly with their classroom. And I've gotten
Mhm.
pictures with kids drawing their families and how excited
Mhm.
they were to
Okay.
see, their Mimi or their Nana or their Granny in the book. So
Mhm. Mhm.
that was the main feedback that I received. And I think people just overall just, I'm looking at the book. I'm over here like,
Right. Yeah, it's a beautiful book.
overall,
Yes.
I've gotten a lot of positive feedback, quite honestly. And people were excited to see so many different grandparents in the book. So,
That's
yeah.
wonderful. Where can readers find your books?
You can find my book at Barnes and Nobles. You can also
Mhm.
find it on Amazon. You can also
Mhm.
find it on Books a Million.
Mhm.
The hardback is on Walmart.
Okay. Wow.
I do, and I say this lovingly because I
Mhm.
really do like to highlight my indie bookstores. So
Mhm.
um, book bookshop.org, and,
Yes.
and they, if you go on and you put in either of my books, you can
Mhm.
support an indie bookstore that is in your
Mhm.
area.
Mhm.
I believe it was IndieBound and maybe Bookshop bought IndieBound, or they have some type of
Okay.
relationship, but you can also use
Okay.
IndieBound where you can
Mhm.
support your favorite indie bookstores. I also
Mhm.
have my book at in Greensboro. It's in next next chapter
All
bookstore
right.
in Greensboro, and it's also with the indie bookstore online, Laces and Pages.
Oh, wonderful.
Yes.
Wonderful. And I'm going to plug a bookstore that is wonderful. It's a good friend of mine. It's in Petersburg, Virginia, only black owned bookstore in Petersburg. And it's
Yay.
Resist Booksellers.
Okay. Okay.
So reach out to Demetrius. It's resist underscore BKS on Instagram. Reach
Okay.
out to them and resistbooksellers.com. Reach out to them.
Okay. I
Brand new
will do.
bookstore. Wonderful. Wonderful.
Thanks.
And where can we find you on social media?
I am on Instagram at the
Hmm.
Children's Poet,
Hmm.
Tee,
Hmm.
Children's Poet. There's also a The Children's Poet somewhere around, so I just want to make sure
Okay.
people have that extra E
Right.
after. Um, and I'm online. I have a website, www.holidayfirminbooks.com.
Hmm.
You cannot buy your books directly from me unless I'm out and about selling them. But on my website, if you want to go to either Barnes and Nobles or Amazon, the links will take you there. on my IG page, I do have a link tree that will take you to
Okay.
all the indie bookstores that I'm in, first and foremost. And it'll also take you to Barnes and Nobles and Amazon if you want to go there to buy the books.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Wonderful. Well, we have come to the end of our show. Thank you so much
Oh,
for sharing your time and talents with me
yes.
today. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited. I'm happy to be here. So excited I could make it. I'm loving your energy. I can't wait to see
Oh,
this all put
thank
together.
yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much again for taking time out of your vacation to spend some time here with me.
Absolutely.
Yay! And y'all know what time it is. At the end of every show, I leave you with a quote. And today's quote comes from Nina Simone's song, Young, Gifted, and Black. And the first few lines go something like this: Young, gifted, and black. Oh, what a lovely, precious dream to be young, gifted, and black. Open your heart to what I mean. In the whole world, you know there's a million boys and girls who are young, gifted, and black. And that's a fact. You are young, gifted, and black. We must begin to tell our young there's a world waiting for you. Yours is the quest that's just begun. Until next time, y'all, you know what to do. Grab a book and read, and I'm out. Thank you for lending me your ear today. If you've enjoyed this independent podcast, you can help me continue to shine the light on Black authors and their stories by becoming a patron at patreon.com/betweenthereads, or by giving a one-time gift at www.ko-fi.com/betweenthereadspodcast. That's ko-fi.com/betweenthereadspodcast. Tune in next time for another great episode.